Where the hell's my earphones?
Welcome everybody to the PinstripeChronicles podcast. I am Tats. I am here with Rob and Donald, and we are just having a laugh because we just heard a really funny joke, and that is that the Yankees are second to the Dodgers, World Series favorites. And to give you the top five, we got Don. You want to read out the top five?
Yeah, we got the Dodgers. We got the Yankees, number 2. Then we got the Astros, 3rd. The Mets, 4th. Blue Jays, 5th. White Sox, 6th. Padres, 7. Tampa, 8. The Brewers, 9. Braves, the champions, 10.
All right, stop
Boston,
right there. Stop it.
Boston, 11.
Because the fact that the Braves won the World Series and they're just listed 10th that's an insult. You would think that they'd have a higher chance to repeat than somebody else coming in. Even with the 88-win season, they were still a solid team, and they're going to have a healthier roster going into 2022. They're going to have Acuna, and that was a big factor for them. That's when they started to really fall off in the season.
But Snedeker, one of the best managers in the game.
Yeah, but with the Yankees, now the fun thing is when you compare the two New York teams, all right, Yankees being second, the Mets being 4th, and these are the odds that were put out by Vegas, and they were posted to DraftKings. All right, and the fact that the Mets had made moves before the lockout, and the Yankees sat idle. Do you think that kind of skews the odds? Because we don't even know what the Yankees are going to be able to accomplish to improve on the team that was bumped out in the wild card. Where the Mets, even though they didn't make the postseason, they still had, over the offseason, they still made additions to their, especially when you're adding somebody like Scherzer to pitch with DeGrom. Don't you think that would give them better odds?
They both shouldn't be in the top 5. I'll tell you that right now. We should not be number 2. The Mets should not be number 4. They're not World Series contenders right now. The Yankees aren't. The Mets aren't. I do think, it's my personal opinion, that we are a better overall team than the Mets, but none of us should be in the top 5, maybe not even top 10 if you're going by last season. The Braves should be number 1. The Astros should be number 2 if you're going by how they finished last year. The Dodgers should always be there because of the roster they've assembled. I think, with the Yankees it's just the name. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. You guys go ahead. Give me a sec.
His voice is gone.
My voice is gone.
I will tell you that right now. It sounds like Joe Judge, bro. You sound like Joe Judge. I will tell you that right now. We're a lot closer than we are farther away. So the Yankees, man, it's crazy that they're second favorite. I mean, let's be honest here. The Yankees at the moment, if we're looking at the American League East, I mean, we're probably still 3rd, if that. Probably Toronto's probably ahead of us right now. Yankees have to overhaul quite a lot. They need a first baseman. They need a shortstop. They need a center fielder. They need a catcher. Those are 4 things that they definitely need. Then they need to look at starting pitching. And that's just to start with. Then we can even go into the category below where we're not entirely sure what we're going to get from Chapman. Is Chapman the answer at closer? Because Chapman melted down again last year, just as he melted down the year before, just like he's melted down the year prior to that. He always has his annual meltdown for about a month at a time. Where
this past year, the meltdown lasted a lot longer than he has in the past. Usually, he only has like that one. He'll have like that 2-week stretch where, he's the most hated, athlete in New York. But
where Boone doesn't even trust him. Where Boone doesn't even trust him for a while. So we got that issue. We need a number 2 starter minimum. Taillon's obviously. We don't know if Taillon's going to be healthy for spring training. We think he is, but again, we don't know because he's got hurt again. So we got a lot of answers at starting pitching. We need to overhaul about 4 or 5 positions in terms of positions. So then, how could you possibly say at this juncture that the Yankees are the second best team in baseball or second most likely team to win a World Series? Absolutely false, I'm afraid. I don't care. I know this is a Yankee podcast. It's false. The Yankees have a lot of work to do. So at the moment, they're third in the American League East, probably fourth. At the moment, I have Toronto ahead of us. We got a lot of work to do.
No,
I think
you can't
based
be a
off, I'm
blind
sorry.
fan. You have to look at things objectively, and that's really what we prefer to do.
No, I think it's based off of potential on the roster because on paper the Yankees have so much potential. Like Gleyber Torres is potentially a great player. All these guys at their peak, at their best, like Sanchez at his best is one of the best offensive catchers in the game. Gleyber Torres at his best, but there's too many ifs on the roster for us to say they're the second best team in baseball when it's just clearly not true. Now, could they go into this season with the roster they have right now and win a lot of games? Sure, because they just have too good of a team overall to not win a lot of games. But we've seen already going by last year, they don't do that. So I don't know what these odds are talking about because like just last year tells us and the year before that potential is not enough to say this team is second best. I don't think we're top 5 right now. Potential to be sure, but top 5, top 10, maybe even put us outside of the top 10, like just based off of how they underperformed last year. We should have been far better than the second wild card team, and they beat themselves. So it's certainly confusing, but I think they're doing it. Before I lost my voice, I was saying I think it has to do with like the name because the Yankees are such a hot bet every year. A lot of people bet the Yankees, so maybe they're just doing it for that, but no one's going to go bet the Rockies for the World Series. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But I don't know. Top 2, absolutely not. No.
You
How
brought
are
up
the Padres so low? I mean, the Padres are 4, 5, 6. They're 7. They've just got an upgraded manager. They got one of the best managers in baseball. Their team is stacked. They were just badly managed last year. So now that they've fixed that, you would assume that they're going to be right there next year. I think they've got a really good team, so they should be higher. So I'm really not quite sure. And how are the Brewers higher than the Braves? That's a weird one. Do you know what I mean?
Brewers were solid last year.
And how are the San Francisco Giants? They're not even in the top 10, 11, so they're like 14th. Like, what is happening here with
it's a very skewed list. It doesn't make any sense. If you're going off of, what we saw from last year, the Brewers should be a little higher up. They had a phenomenal, their postseason run was short, but it was very, they played hard. It wasn't like they just got rolled over. The Yankees got rolled over in the wild card game. And they're still ranked higher. So the Brewers, they deserve, to be in that top of the list. So I'm not a big gambling person. So, you're just looking at the names on a list of the order that they're in. I don't see where the Yankees, unless Vegas knows something that we don't that's going on under the table. If the Yankees go and they re-sign Rizzo and they make the move for Correa, and bring in somebody to play center field, then you could see that number 2 spot being well deserved and an easy bet. But there's no guarantee on any of that.
I think that's what it is. I think Vegas is such, pun intended, it's a crapshoot with everything. This is not a power rankings list. This is, I guess it goes off of who bets who the most. The Yankees are a lot of the time in people's minds a safe bet. Even though they haven't done anything in the last decade, but whatever. I don't know why they're always high on the list though. Every year they're like top 5 at least. Sometimes top 3. In this case, top 2. They shouldn't be, but maybe they know something we don't. I don't know. Maybe Correa is getting.
Good point. It's not a power rankings list, man.
Yeah. Maybe Boris being Correa's agent now is a good sign for the Yankees. When business resumes, we get him. We're better than a lot of teams with just adding Correa because now we have a legitimate shortstop. And with 1 or 2 moves, if we get Rizzo and Correa, our infield is best in baseball as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's a huge defensive upgrade. Because you're able to put, the only problem would be is with second base between LeMahieu and Torres, of who gets the majority of the play over at second base. Because you're not going to, LeMahieu and Torres, one of the other is not going to be your bench player. They're going to be an everyday player. And so it can create another problem. And as much as, we've argued about, I'm not big on Correa, not because of his ability, but because of his actions off the field, and the way that he handled everything with the cheating scandal. I'm not over that yet, but that's besides the point. If you're getting somebody with the talent of Correa, it can create another problem. You're solving one, but you're creating another. So, Cashman's going to have a lot of work to do, if he's making these type of moves.
I mean, in a perfect world, if we want to go like full on fantasy baseball and the Yankees just did what they want, and this is actually kind of realistic, they could sign Rizzo, sign Correa, and trade for like a Brian Reynolds, because they have the assets to do it, especially now that they got Arias in the prospect list. They can move Peraza and other guys, and even Gleyber Torres in a trade for a guy like Brian Reynolds. And all of a sudden, your entire roster has been improved, except for the catcher position. But you can live with a defense if they wanted to start Higashioka and the catcher spot, bat him ninth, because 1 through 8 in the lineup is literally stacked if you added Reynolds, brought back Rizzo, and added Correa. And those are realistic moves. They could do it if they really, really wanted to. I just don't think they will. Realistically, you're looking at probably getting Rizzo and a stopgap at shortstop, whether that's Urshela playing there next year or a guy like Simmons, or maybe even a trade for Kiner Falafel. So that's
Falafel. We love falafel.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking about power rankings, bro. I decided to do a little bit of investigation. So one article has a updated power rankings as of the 30th of November after the first wave of free agency. So they have the Braves first, second the White Sox, third Brewers, 4 Blue Jays, 5 Dodgers, 6 Houston, 7 the Mutts, 8 Tampa Bay, 9 Yankees. That's a bit more accurate. That's sportsnot.com. That's pretty accurate. CBS.com has us 9th as well in the most recent power rankings as of November. So I think that's a more accurate reflection of where we are. Probably, 9th, 10th.
The bottom of the top 10 is where
I have the Mets slightly ahead of us. I have the Mets ahead of us by maybe a place or two, too. So I don't really have much of a problem with that. So, yeah, the Yankees have a lot of work to do. They are nowhere near second. That's for sure. You guys were talking about Correa. So my question to you guys is, with the fact he's changing to Scott Boras as an agent, does that help or hinder the Yankees' chances of bringing him in?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I think the agent doesn't matter. As much of a powerhouse as Boris is, Correa's play, his ability on the field is that's his agent. That's what he's going to sell, and that's what he's going to get paid for. So I think when you're bringing in somebody like Boris, Boris has become one of those. It seems he's more interested in the years that are going to come along with the contract, because the money per year is going to be there. It's all right. How long do you want to stay?
Yeah, I think that's very important for the Yankees as well, because I don't think they want to give a guy 8 to 10 years. That's why I think they're probably going to be out of the Correa race. I hope that they would, because even if you get him through his age 36, 37 season, I mean, for at least 6 of those years, maybe even more, he's going to give you elite play at the shortstop position. But because they have like 19 shortstops that they want to call up to the major league level, that's probably why they don't want to go, because they didn't go 8 for Simeon. They weren't going to give that number to Seager. So unless they were in on Correa the whole time and they were just trying to work stuff out before the lockout, then I don't see us really getting him as much as I'd like to. But I think the years are very important because he might want this to be his only contract that he has to go through in free agency, because he can get 10 years, like 400 million, and he's set, for the rest of his career, and then way beyond that, so that's what Cano did. Remember, he wanted that one big contract to be the only one he has to go through. So maybe it's something along those lines. I don't know if the Yankees do it, especially not for potentially 40 million a year. So it's all just a wait and see game, because everything's fantasy at this point, because we don't have a freaking league to play.
From what you're saying there, Tats, I think you're right there. I think that this move is a power move. That means that he's obviously wanting high salary and a significant contract. I don't think that it will be one of those prove it deals. I know prove it deals is the wrong word, but like in terms of short length of years and maybe a higher average salary, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's signed up in order to get himself a big time contract over a good length of time. So you're spot on, Tat. So I think that probably takes us out of it. I don't think we're going to be involved in the career, even though Yankees and Boris have worked together a number of times and have a working relationship, and Boris often checks in with us with his clients. So he'll 100% check in with us because that's his job. But I don't think the Yankees will be in the Korea sweepstakes.
No, and you brought up with the thing with Semien, how we didn't want to give him that extra year.
I really wanted him.
But if you play, if you try to figure out if lightning can strike twice, we didn't go the extra year on Corbin because we knew we wanted money in that pot for Cole. So if lightning strikes twice for everybody that's looking for Correa on the Yankees, they may have, said, what, we could have given him the extra year, but we're going to keep that money in the pot for Correa. So maybe lightning can strike twice for the Bronx.
Maybe, but do you really think they're going to give someone 40 million a year potentially when they're operating with this imaginary budget? That's the thing. That's the whole thing, is they have this apparently not so deep pocket, even though we know they can afford literally any player they want and be okay. Because if you give Correa the money that he wants, if you brought in a Matt Olson or a Rizzo at first base, and that significantly improves your roster, you're going to make that money right back this season with ticket sales and jerseys. You know how many people I know everyone hates Correa apparently, but people are going to buy that jersey up. And if you extend Aaron Judge, that's more jersey sales. That's more ticket sales. People are going to line up to watch this team play. They're going to sell out every game. And guess what? The money that you just spent is coming right back to you, especially if you go on a World Series run. Then again, there's more money in your pocket. So I don't know why they're operating.
10 times over. But the thing is, Hal Steinbrenner's a businessman, man. Yeah. He knows that the Yankees sell out every year anyway. All he has to do is put a team that's representative in an American league where, if the Yankees are average, then they tend to make the full wild card. And that's what they were last year. I think average is even actually very kind. In fact, they were pretty much below average for most of last year, and they still made the wild card. So if the team is representative and competitive, then he knows the Yankee Stadium will sell out anyway, because it's a tourist attraction for one. And two, everybody loves the Yankees. It's a beloved franchise, so the fans will always be there. So he knows that, and he's taking advantage of that. He doesn't need to go overboard. He doesn't care about winning. He really doesn't. As long as the team's competitive and the money's coming in, it's all he cares about. So I think basically as he's going to put in these self-imposed budgets. He really is. He always will do. That's how he's going to operate from now on.
But you have the sticker shock. You're going to have the sticker shock with a 10 years, 400 million. There's going to be the sticker shock for that. But also take into account, as the years go on, that money it's not going to sting as much. Because other players are going to catch up to those numbers. So, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you had said somebody was going to get paid $300 million, that was considered, an outrageous amount of money for a contract, where now that's kind of the average. So we used to think that Stanton, when he got that deal with the Marlins, that was so extravagant, and it was, how could you pay somebody that much money? Well, Stanton's not really one of the highest paid right now. There are a lot of players. He's in a large group of high paid.
Yeah, he looks like a steal at this point because of what we're paying him. Yeah. Because if he would have hit the market this year after the season he just had, he'd get probably something similar to what we're paying him, maybe even more. So I think that in terms of in Correa, why I don't think they're going to end up adding him is they just don't want to have that many big contracts on the books because they want to re-sign Aaron Judge. And again, it all comes back to Hal and this imaginary budget. I'm not saying they have to sign every single person they want, like George did, because it created this logjam and the team wasn't that good, to be honest, in those early 2000s years, because we kept getting bounced out in the first round. And we had all those contracts, 2005, 2006, 2007, and make the playoffs in 08, and we had all the money in the world on that roster. So
it's all going to come down to if they could restructure the shared revenue deal.
Well, look at this, man.
CBA.
Tats, you were talking about how in a couple of years' time, like a $40 million contract isn't that much of a big deal because as the years go on and inflation, and then, of course, CBA or whatever, and contracts will inevitably be higher. So with that in mind, this is crazy. 2019, the Yankees payroll was $223 million, where they earned $700 million in revenue. Last year, our payroll was $210 million. So our payroll was actually less than it was 2 years prior, right? So the Yankees are bringing in almost $1 billion in revenue, and their payroll is pretty much sticking at 200 million, right? So that's what you're talking about, what, 30%? So Hal Steinbrenner's sticking with that, man. So the Yankees are only really putting in about 30% of their revenue.
Yeah, but if the revenue threshold goes up, then that's going to give more room for teams to spend.
But Hal Steinbrenner voted to lower that, man. He doesn't want to. He knows that he knows that he can get away with this.
No, I'm not saying I'm not speaking just specifically on Hal. It's if they're able to raise that threshold overall, then that gives the Yankees. There's no excuse now for Hal to say, well, we need to stay under a threshold. Well, if the threshold goes up to, for argument's sake, say it goes up to 300. I think the tax threshold now is at 250. Or 220 in that range. That gives them that extra million, those extra millions per year that they could put into the roster. And so they won't have that excuse no more.
It's such a dumb excuse anyway. Like
it is a dumb excuse, but that's why it's hard to find the words trying to figure out what Hal's thinking, because all he's thinking about is saving money,
Hal doesn't even know what he's thinking.
No,
We talked about this before. The Yankees are operating like a team that, like, Tampa Bay has to operate how the Yankees operate. I've said this already. They're operating like we have this imaginary budget. It's stupid. I'm not asking them to sign every single player available, but Correa or Story at least. That makes
the money. If you're investing the money in the right players, like Don was pointing out, the money's going to come back.
Yeah, here's why I'm annoyed. And just to circle us back to our original conversation about where the Yankees were ranked with the power rankings. The Yankees could have walked into the start of free agency prior to the lockout and gotten whoever they wanted, whoever their number one target was. They could have just gone, right? Whatever it was, they could have negotiated the price, got the job done, signed, sealed, delivered, got it done before the lockout. So the fact they didn't makes me question who their target is. Do they even have a target, or are they just waiting to see whoever's available once the price goes down? Because it just doesn't make any sense. Because obviously at the start of the free agency, the Yankees were linked with Seager, and they were linked with Story, and they were linked with Correa, and they were linked with Simeon, right? And then both of them dropped. The two of the main guys dropped off the board pretty damn quick, and the Yankees weren't involved. So it makes me wonder, who's the target? Because whoever it is, whether even if it's Story, and I know he's still available, even if it's Story, why didn't they just go in and get it negotiated and get the job done? What I don't understand is why they're just sitting waiting. What are they waiting for? And they can't just use the excuse of, oh, we want to see what the CBA is, because it doesn't matter to the Mets. And I'm sorry, I know that Cohen is richer than Hal Steinbrenner, but the Mets are not richer than the New York Yankees. The Yankees are the richest organization in all of sports. In all of sports. So the Yankees can sign anybody they want. They could have just done it on the day so that they don't have to worry once things reopen. We don't know when it reopens, if it reopens. And then the Yankees are going to have to start mad scrambling to who the shortstop's going to be, who the center fielder, who the catcher's going to be. They could have just gotten at least one of them done prior to the lockout. So the fact that they haven't makes me think that A, they're only thinking about budget, and two, I don't think they're all that competitive. I really don't think that they're all that worried about what the Mets are doing, what their rivals are doing. I think the Yankees are just quite satisfied. That's what my personal, and because how else can you view it? I might be wrong. Maybe things will change, but as of what we could only see, we can only go by what we see. The fact the Yankees didn't do anything makes me think that they're only really budget conscious.
To bring to kind of, I guess, to keep on from your point, they should never care about what the Mets do. Never. If there was the Red Sox and the Rays, like the Blue Jays made moves, but pretty much every other team in our division that we have to worry about didn't. So I think that's why they're like, oh, we really don't have to worry about who we play. They should never, ever worry about what the Mets do. I don't care what the Mets do. The Yankees should not care what the Mets do. Hal Steinbrenner should not care if people think Cohen is better than him. If it was the Red Sox and the teams we have to play 19 times a year doing these things while we stood pat, then yeah, you should get angry. But you're right, though. They had opportunities. They never did it. They had chances. They could have had Story. They could have had Rizzo back. They could have even traded for Olsen or at least negotiated it. Maybe they did for all we know, and they can't do it now. But they had chances. They went into the offseason like day one. We have to improve this position, and they didn't do it, and that's the issue there. They didn't do anything besides bring back Joely Rodriguez and like some minor league moves. So it's like, we know why. I know why they're not doing it, because they're waiting for the CBA. But again, you could have afforded at least Anthony Rizzo re-signing. You could have at least given us that before the lockout.
Yeah. No, that's the problem. It wasn't the fact that didn't make, there are a lot of teams that didn't make any moves before the CBA. The Red Sox haven't improved. Tampa, as much as they're a pain in the ass every year, they haven't made any significant moves. They actually lost, one of their better players again, which doesn't matter to them, but Joey Wendell's gone from the Rays. So the only team in the division that really made any moves are the Blue Jays. So, and then I think the other team that had like some really big splashes were the Texas Rangers. The Mets made their moves with Scherzer, and there's a lot of other teams. The Dodgers haven't done anything, they didn't get far in the postseason. The Giants knocked them out. So it's
the Dodgers are a stack. The Yankees.
I'm not saying that they have to make moves, but there are teams, that did not make it to through the postseason that still have not done anything yet. And obviously our only concern is our own team, but it's everyone's like, well, because some teams that we're familiar with made moves, like across town and within the division with the Blue Jays and the Mets, we all want to hit the panic button. And the only reason that we're not hitting the panic button is because this is kind of what we expected. We knew they weren't going to do anything before the lockout started. So I don't know, why is everybody so surprised? I don't get it.
I think it's just because we knew it was coming, so you would hope that they would have, for the first time, had some urgency to be like, we kind of have to do something, because we knew the lockout was going to happen. We knew it was going to be ugly. We know it's going to last until right before spring training at the very least. So you would have thought this would be the one off season where they said, F it, we got to go all in as soon as possible and get our guys that we want. just so when we do resume, we don't have to worry about upgrading too much. But they didn't do any of that. So I understand both sides of the argument, because me personally, without a lockout, I've been like, who cares if we don't make moves in November? We're a December team when it comes to the offseason. But again, because the lockout happened December 2nd, whatever it was, they didn't do anything. This would have been the offseason to be like, everything else goes out the window, what we're used to doing. We got to get it done now. Even if it was just 1 or 2 moves, you didn't do anything besides bring back a good relief pitcher. So now your bullpen's set, great. Your rotation is effectively set, awesome. But you still have like 4 holes in the offense that you did not address at all. And when our GMs came out and said, yeah, we have about 3 positions that we want to improve on, and you didn't do any of that. So it's like, come on, man, give us something. And we can't now.
That's exactly it. I mean, you can only go by what Brian Cashman actually said. He says shortstop is a priority. Well, shortstop clearly wasn't a priority because he just sat on it. And, it's just the narrative. It's the narrative. And that's what we were always upset about last year. The narrative. And the narrative always seems to change on a dime. So Brian Cashman obviously gave off the indication that he was going to be very aggressive, and the Yankees have been passive. And it's not a good look. And as I say, the reason why I'm quite concerned is because of the reason I gave before, whereas they could have approached it differently, gotten at least one of their main targets, gotten signed, sealed, and delivered prior to the lockout, which means that it wouldn't have been such panic stations as soon as it reopens. But I'm not even sure if the Yankees are actually that concerned. I don't think the Yankees want to make major changes. Everything that I'm seeing from their coaching staff to bring back Aaron Boone for 3 years, despite Brian Cashman actually saying the Yankees were unwatchable last year. He's been re-upped for 3 years plus an option. And the fact the Yankees sat out and then gives Gary Sanchez a pay rise, which is unbelievable, but okay. And also him saying that Aaron Hicks is going to be back in the team. All this seems to indicate that the Yankees are seriously considering just rolling it back next year with much of the same roster, which is a fundamentally flawed premise, and it's a huge mistake. But I think that's what the Yankees are going to do. I think the Yankees, once the lockout ends, I think the Yankees will go aggressive with a first baseman, and then they'll bring in a stopgap shortstop and plan ahead for Volpe. I don't think you're going to get too many major moves. I just think that the way the Yankees have handled this says that they're not that aggressive.
Yeah. At this point, I'm okay with Urshela at shortstop if that's their stopgap option, because I don't want them putting money into Simmons when you're just going to sign a guy for 2 years, or that option of trading for Chapman and moving him to shortstop just makes no sense to me. So if you're going to go stopgap and wait for Volpe, just keep Urshela for the 2 years you have him, and get a first baseman, because I do not want Luke Voit starting at first base next year, or LeMahieu. That's the one thing, if they do that I'm be totally against, is starting Luke Voit or LeMahieu at first. I don't want that at all. Because Voigt's too fragile. Every offseason, we see him working out and lifting weights, and he gets bulkier and bulkier, and he gets hurt within like a week. And it sucks because he's got the potential to be a outstanding player. But it's just, I don't know. I
hate those Twitter things with those photographs of like Voit and Torres working out in the gym, as if that means anything. Like, that doesn't actually mean anything. It does not mean that they're going to suddenly bat 300 and drive in 50 home runs because they're working out in the gym. Like, I hate that those photographs. Like, they mean like basketball when you're seeing them shoot, in practice, and they're hitting every shot because there's nobody defending them. So of course they're going to hit every shot. They're freaking professional NBA players, and sportsmen working out in the gym, and they're like, yeah, flexing and all that stuff. It doesn't mean performance, man. I don't care. I don't care that Gleyber Torres is working hard in the gym. I don't care that Luke Voigt's working hard in the gym. This is what they should be doing. They're professional.
I guess he had a makeshift pitching mound, and he was, strengthen, she had a picture of him throwing to strengthen up his shoulder. Okay, good. At least we know that he's working it. He's trying to get his health back together. And make sure that he can go once the season starts. If the season starts.
Because he's not allowed to work at the team facility because these two clown shows running the goddamn thing won't let them work. Ugh,
That's good. Let's wrap this up. Now, just you're listening to the Pinstripe Chronicles. This is for sportnarian.com/player.
Are you all right, Tats? You just laughed away from that.
It's
repeat that.
I was trying not to cough. And so just remember, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let us know who you think is the favorites to win the World Series. Pay your Pinstripes for pride.
What a meltdown. Rob, finish it for us.
Check out the social media links in the description and listen to us on sportnarium.com/player on SportsWire Radio. There you go.
Holy
Yankee. Stop recording.